Hello, everybody, and welcome, one and all, to episode number 71 of Final Boss TV, your WoW and game rating show. I will be your host. My name is Adam K, aka Bay, and after a little bit of a hiatus, had some IRL MMO stuff last Sunday. That happens sometimes. I don't know what the hell that is. Chatter might be like, there's something outside of World of Warcraft? Which I said that same thing too. But today is going to be Mistweaver Monks. There is no after show today. Two of my guests are from Midwinter, and they're trying to get some like world second of some boss that's important right now. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, black-handed something. I don't know. But we'll get to that. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them in chat. Geodude is in chat, the resident Thek. I said resident Thek for Mistweaver Monks. So feel free to ask them in chat. But I have that co-host guy back again this week. I don't know if you guys remember this guy. He's something, there he is. Hi, Skylar.
Hello.
You look scared. You're like, where am I? Where am I? Where is it?
Hello.
But hi, sir. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm probably having a little more sleep than you guys have had, so, I mean, good. I'm good.
I don't know. Who do you sleep? Like, that's... Nah.
How long did you guys raid yesterday?
A lot? I don't know. I mean, we average, what, like 10 hours between each raid day, which is actually pretty solid sleep, honestly, compared to the 7 that I was used to, so...
That's fair enough.
I wake up refreshed.
Good. Our two guests today also joining us from this guild called Midwinter. They've been doing some things in Warlords. They're doing all right. There's Monkioh. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
You ready for this? You have a great beard.
So
by the way.
so ready. Ready. Just to spend some time not raiding and not sleeping.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm
doing something other than those two things is kind of a nice break.
Raiding, sleeping.
I'm pushing back your start time today or something. Like all for the show.
They were very, very understanding and very
I buttered Ted up by having him on the show before progression. That's what I did. All planned. All planned. And then joining us from way across the pond, there's Suplift. Hello, sir.
Hello.
That's much better. There we go. I like it. Good. We're gonna talk about Mistweavers?
Yeah, I'm ready.
For the next 4.5 hours. Oh, what is that? Is that crying? Why are you crying? Or are you? That's so terrible. All right. Oh my goodness. I always do we did the meet and greet setups for the show, and I'm like, yeah, it'll be half an hour, 45 minutes. I think we had 2 hours, and Skylar was like, we gotta raid soon. Can we wrap this up? I was like, whoa. Yeah. Plenty to talk about with Mistweavers. Holy crap. Plenty to talk about, indeed. So, I guess we'll open this up real quick. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I don't really care what Affinity thinks right now, but what are your guys' thoughts are on let's do Blackrock Foundry so far. What do you think so far? Suplift, I'll go with you first, and I'll go Monkioh. What do you think about BRF so far?
I really like the instance. I think it's an overall pretty good instance it could be better from a healing standpoint, but I really enjoy the potential Monk has on most fights in this instance, so it's pretty good. Yeah. I'm enjoying it. It's definitely a step up from Highmaul in terms of enjoyment as a Mistweaver Monk, so...
Right. Well, didn't Mistweaver have a really tumultuous time in Highmaul at first? We were like, why are we bringing in this class, sort of? It was like, eh. So... Yeah.
It's a better now. That's good.
Yeah. It's better now. Exactly. And then Monkioh, what do you think so far? BRF.
I definitely like it, more than Highmaul. The last two bosses of Highmaul were great, but Blackrock Foundry is definitely, for monks specifically, a very good instance. The fights themselves are very entertaining, very challenging, and mythic, and I think it's a lot of fun. Bosses have good mechanics, and really enjoying it.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, fine, Skylar. What do you think so far?
I wasn't actually going to add anything. I mean, I think it's been good overall, but yeah, same sentiment as far as healing. It's a little weird to see a lot of the fights be more mechanic checks than they are DPS checks. It's definitely a little different from Blizzard across the board, but some pretty solid fights so far, I think.
Now, are we good about that? I know that's what we talked about before setting up the show, that there aren't a lot of And the biggest one that I thought was going to be a big check, which you agree with too, was Chromog. Like HP wise, you're like, oh crap, we need some serious DPS for this, but not a thing. So everything is like, move here, don't stand in this, do this at this exact time, use 17 cooldowns right here, and that's sort of what BRF looks like.
I mean, I think mechanic checks aren't necessarily a bad thing. You see quite a few guilds are struggling on some fights that you'd think, might not necessarily be a problem in a high-end guild, but it could be more so because of mechanic checks and a little more personal responsibility as opposed to just DPSing a boss.
Right.
I do kind of wish that they balanced it out a little bit and made it more like some were mechanic checks, some were DPS checks, but, that is what it is.
Yeah. It does seem like there was a little bit of a separation there, because I was saying for the show that I almost felt like the first 7 bosses of this tier, there are 17 bosses in tier 17, Blizzard, and it, sort of like the first couple in BRF, though, are kind of introductory, but they shouldn't have been. The top guilds are going to crush this content regardless, right? The top 10 in the world are going to crush it and then be done with it, right? There's only 1 kill on Blackhand already, though, so... Is it a good tuning point, bad tuning point, where there's like 1 roadblock with Blast Furnace? I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Monkioh?
So far, I think the fights have been relatively well tuned. Obviously, some things were kind of not tuned, even when we were going in there. I know when we were going to pull Chromog, first time we saw him in the instance on live, he had like 290 million or something like that Affinity health, and then
280, yeah.
The next time we saw him, minutes later, he had about 90 million less health. So that was kind of a interesting little there. But other than that, the bosses are good, well tuned. And like Affinity was saying, like the mechanic checks I think are good early on. It's better to have mechanic checks earlier on, and then the gear checks and I guess player checks later in the fight or in the instance. Definitely feel like the fights are pretty well tuned overall. Some were really hard. Blast Furnace was challenging for the wrong reasons. But outside of that, good stuff.
Speaking of the Blast Furnace, though, the kills have been released. There's a couple of them online now. If you haven't seen the hell that is Blast Furnace, watching a kill video, you don't really know all the inside pieces, but not
all the struggles leading up to it.
Yeah, a little bit something. A little bit of that. So I guess we'll push us forward into, well, I guess we're backtracking a little bit. Mists Pandaria was awkward in some ways for certain healers, what you lost and what you gained in that regard. So what happened going into Warlords for Mistweaver Monks, Suplift? Like what did you lose? How'd that work out for you guys? How'd the ability pruning hit you guys?
We lost, from memory, I think we lost... it's not really a pruning, but we lost the ability to generate chi from Suving Mist, and we lost Healing Spear. I think that's it. I could be wrong. But how it affected us, our chi gen, the biggest problem in MOP was our chi gen was RNG. That was a big factor of the class in MOP. You had RNG Renewing Mist, and you had RNG chi gen. So they pushed it towards a more consistent model, which is overall better for the class. It's more consistent now, because you have more rems out. They reworked it into more of a smart heal, I believe. And, well, Chi Gen, they buffed, obviously, the Chi spells, and it's a lot easier to get Chi now than it was in MOP. So, overall, good changes for Monks from MOP.
I see the chat immediately brings up the jab uplift back in the day. That was...
Please.
I never got to experience that. I didn't play Monk back then.
Oh, you missed out, man.
I played Monk in Tot in Throne of Thunder. That's when I started.
I played in 5.1. That was the best time for Monk IMO.
Yeah?
Nice.
So I think first change, the other change was that Red Crane became a real thing, which we'll get into a bit after that, unless, Scott, you want to take us into this topic? I know as a Resto Druid, this is kind of like, I guess, tender territory for you in some regard.
Red Crane? I don't know.
Well, the Red Crane into the active mana regen stuff.
We can go into active mana regen. It's definitely a sore topic from a Resto Druid. So Mistweaver were basically the only ones that really kind of got to keep the active mana regen. Blizzard bounced a little back and forth on if they wanted to introduce it to the other healers, and then they axed it. And some classes like Druid did lose, Innervate altogether and didn't really get anything to compensate. Do you guys like Mana Tea? Do you feel that it's engaging, or do you like Monkioh? Do you feel like it's more maintenance and more just like you have to deal with it as opposed to being a fun mechanic for the class?
Yeah, I feel like it's almost passive ability that you have to activate, which sounds kind of weird, but like it's not a mana regen mechanic because you have to actually spend mana to get it back. It's a mana refund mechanic. Is kind of how we've accepted it to be, and it's just an annoyance, really. Every other healer gets to keep on healing or make decisions the whole time, whereas monks have to stop and actively, I guess, regen their mana by channeling the spell and doing absolutely nothing between. I mean, I guess you can use a Rushing Jade Wind and have that spinning around you while you channel your Mana Tea, and that's kind of how I do it sometimes. But I really wish, I think the game would be, the class would be better if it either didn't exist or it was improved a little bit more. You're limited in how you can generate it, because right now it's a big factor in Monk mana regen and output, and it's too much of a factor, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I I know Suplift has openly talked about Mana Tea and stuff like before. So what do you think? What's up?
I think it's a blemish on a good class IMO.
God. A
There's nothing
blemish.
act-
That's one way
there's
to put it.
nothing-
Pretty fair.
Jeez.
There's nothing active about Fistweaving to 20 sacks and then RJWing on Margok. Wow, active regen, guys. But seriously, I feel like the class has enough uniqueness with the Red Crane and the renewing this uplift mechanic that it doesn't need this active mana regen mechanic to make it differentiated from other healers. Because even without that, I feel monks are pretty unique. I mean, we're mobile, we can roll around the place, we can do a lot of AoE healing with a very unique mechanic, and we can punch things, which is obviously really cool. So,
Right. Okay.
so I think if they rebalanced monk mana around not having it, it'd be a perfect class. IMO.
I agree.
So we had spoken about this a little last night, and you kind of brought it up about the fistweaving component in relation to Mana Tea.
Yeah.
Do you do you fear that like maybe Blizzard's only keeping at least the relation between Mana Tea and fistweaving, like they didn't uncouple the two because they feel like you wouldn't fistweave? Like, do you still feel like you would actually want to fistweave at any given point? Outside of like progression, you would because DPS checks maybe, but if there's not at that point, what's like, is there really a value behind fistweaving still?
I think there's a value of Fistweaving, particularly with Pool of Mist. You can burst pretty hard as a healer with Pool of Mist. I mean, doing 25k DPS burst as a healer is very powerful. So I feel like on its own would be a very powerful mechanic without that. And obviously without the Mana Tea, they could add more things to Fistweaving on paper anyway. So I don't know if Monkioh has any other opinions about that. So.
No, I agree. Like almost every healer can find some time to DPS at some point. Like druids right now are able to do some sort of atonement with Dreamer Cenarius, and monks can do it with Red Crane and priest atonement, whatever. But even without the healing portion of it, if healers have nothing to do, if you have downtime as a healer, it's absolutely beneficial to your raid to do some DPS in your downtime. There's no reason not to. Like you should never be sitting on your globals. If you're not doing anything, if you're not on global cooldown, you're not helping your raid at that point. Maybe it's small, but every little bit counts in progression, so you have to do something.
Yeah.
So even without the Mana Tea generation, it'd still be useful,
I was gonna say it seems like a very actively oriented healing spec where you never have an option to this like wait to do something. You can always be doing something. Whereas Affinity's like, I gotta move my mushroom and I gotta spam rejuve and I keep my life on the tank.
It's not even, you don't even do that, or we won't get into that. We're not even going to get into that because you don't rejuve spam. But yeah, no.
Right.
I mean, that was always my thing about Monk that was kind of nice, was the fact that there's always something to do as opposed to standing there waiting for wild growth to come off cooldown.
Yeah.
It's nice.
That's true.
It's a hint, Blizzard. Get rid of Mana Tea. Do it.
Please.
Do it.
Please.
Do it.
We ask nothing else. We ask that.
Which is weird that you bring that up before we move on, that you are a class that still has one of the remnants of active, which we did the rest with shamans before this, and their active mana regen is a talent they're forced into taking because 1,000 spirit is like, why am I not going to take this? And that's not a very active choice. That is a forced decision, right? So, and they lost their lightning bolt regeneration, and you guys now, with the class that has the last remnants of this, like, you do things, then you get your mana back later because it's active. You don't want it anymore. Like, you're like, get it out! Get it out of here! which that's awkward. I wonder if that, because other healers I think wanted their active regen.
I think other healers only wanted it because monks still kind of
Because
sort
monks
of have
still,
it.
oh
Yeah.
no.
So, to where like resto druids just kind of like, I have no mana, I just get to sit here and do nothing, and monks are like, okay, fistweave and get mana tea stacks and we're good. So I think that's more the sentiment from the rest of the healer community is that they wish that they had something back, or that just the system didn't exist at all.
Yeah, definitely if it didn't exist at all, because like just being able to choose when you get your mana back, like being able to say, okay, I want to spend all my mana here, and then this is a low healing point, so I'll use that time to regen my mana, or just what some people is that was just use it on cooldown. You just spend a whole bunch of mana and just use your regen thing on cooldown, and that was really boring and not very interactive. It's not very engaging. And monks have a similar thing where you kind of have T stacks all the time, so you can use them all the time. So it didn't fit into that 1-2 minute cooldown ability to regen mana. But it's just it's too much. It's too strong, and we don't want it. It's too strong in rating and not strong enough in everything else.
Now, if this is me throwing out my random ideas in the show every time, if you think the Mana Tea mechanic, which is like this store up a whole bunch of charges and just have it sitting around all the time, and then you can just drink it whenever you have downtime, if they remove Mana Tea and if they want to keep Fistweaving a thing, right? Like, and if right now, because Fistweaving is like not mana neutral, like you just gain mana from doing it. If they made like maybe when you Fistweave, you get some componentary thing where you actually gain mana back from doing that, and then you go back to Serpent, which you spend your mana you just gained. Like, would that be a more like back and forth ebb and flow? Because you already have to Fistweave anyway right now to get this stupid consumable. And would that be a little better of a thing with removing Mana Tea?
I don't think Fistweaving needs a mana component to make it appealing. It should be appealing on its own to be worthwhile, not because, if you do Fistweaving, you have infinite mana for the entire fight. That's not... They could, like, an example people give all the time, and we'll see, like, Fistweaving can, while also doing damage, can give you Tiger Eye Brew or something. That's not really the best example.
Right.
But it's like stuff like that is better than the Mana Tea just Fistweaving up to 20 than LOL RGW spam, so...
Yeah, interesting.
Go
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, it would be enough if you didn't generate Mana Tea in Crane Stance while you were Fistweaving, but that it was mana neutral. So you go into it when there's nothing else to do, and you don't lose any mana. You don't necessarily have to gain mana, but the mana cost can be balanced such that at high spirit maybe it's a mana positive thing, and at low spirit it's a mana negative thing. But at an average spirit level that you can expect a monk to have, that Crane is mana neutral, so that like every other healer you can DPS without it affecting your mana. I think that would be a fine solution if they didn't want to remove the mechanic altogether.
And that's weird you bring that up too, because I actually didn't put that in the notes, because as all the healers are about to find out, well, I think Mistweaver doesn't really get it as much, but in 6-1 Tuesday, all the healers are getting a pretty substantial DPS increase.
Right.
So there's sort of this new thing where they kind of want all healers to have that option to actually hit DPS buttons and to not hit for like pool noodles, So that's strange though. I wonder. I do.
Yeah. Monks are still going to do the most sustained damage than other healers, but I think, it'd definitely help out and make you feel like you're not just hitting, I just shot the boss for 500 damage. That really didn't do anything, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm going to bring it back real quick to Blackrock Foundry again, and to reiterate for chat real quick right now, Geodude is in chat. If you have questions about Mistweaver Monks, of course, please feel free to ask them in chat, or bother him on Twitter, because we're not having no after show today. So if you have questions, since we can't do a Q&A for 20-30 minutes after this because Midwinter is raiding, please feel free to ask in chat. But I wanted to go back to the healing situations right now, and a little bit of maybe drama in Blackrock Foundry, maybe. Like, I've always called Mistweavers like the supporty healer. So, I mean, what are your thoughts right now on like the healer hierarchy in BRF? Like, what do you guys think? I'll go with Monkioh first on this one.
I think all the healers are actually relatively balanced. It seems like when we end a fight, like that's a really high healing fight, we see that our healers all end up, if you're using HPS as a gauge, which I really don't think is a very good gauge of healer strength, but it works on high healing fights where there's very low overhealing. Our healers are really close to each other, and they all contribute something very significant to the raid. I feel like maybe like the weakest of healers might be a Holy Priest, but their throughput is fine. It just requires a very specific type of fight where there's low overhealing, sustained damage, and they don't really need to burst single targets or tank heal a whole lot. But other than that, most of the healers are really well balanced. There's a problem in design though where Discipline Priests and Holy Paladins are somewhat necessary. So, your raid slots are almost, your healer raid slots are almost guaranteed to go to one for each of them, maybe two of some other ones. But, it leaves very little room for the, what is it, four throughput healers that exists. And
Yeah.
outside of, slotting issues, all the healers are really, really strong and really, really good. I don't see any weakness to bringing really any of the healers. All good.
And you actually had said right before the show that you were actually kind of like surprised they're buffing Resto Shaman, which we had talked about it before, like they're the weakest healer right now, but you don't think that.
No, I think they're very strong. Okay, so
I think that's a bad idea because you're gonna see like people like methods Resto Shaman and just like destroying people, destroying souls, which is gonna be funny to watch, no doubt. But yeah, I think the biggest problem with Resto Shamans is that the variance between the top end and the lower end is the problem. So they need like kind of like a rework so it's like averaging out. Like an average Mistweaver and a top end Mistweaver is not going to be like light and day like you see with like Methods Resto Shaman and then like an average Resto Shaman. Like that's just a problem with design.
Yeah, and Aladia in chat really just right now said that I don't know why they're buffing Resto Shamans.
Yeah, I don't know why they. I mean, yeah, like you said, it makes sense that if poorly played, Resto Shaman looks pretty bad, but
right,
well played, they're extremely good, and with the tier bonuses, they're really really good. So
Aladia would know. I'm just saying.
Who knows, man?
Yeah. So are there types of encounters that that Mistweaver performs better at?
I think Mistweaver is good on every fight this year. IMO. I don't think there's really a bad fight for Monk, just because of how our healing works and the damage components we can do. I think the biggest thing you'll see with Monk sitting is just the variance of player skill. Like, I think that's the biggest thing right now. Like, some guilds like Midwinter, like they'll run like a Mistweaver, and like a guild like Method will run a Shaman. But I think that's purely because like X player is better than that. I mean, that's probably not true, but that's what you see in like middle end guilds because the throughput healers are like so close in like their output unless you're a Resto Shaman. But
right.
Yeah. But going back to fights, I don't think there's really a fight that's bad. Maybe Iron Maidens, but that's because that fight has no damage.
That's just bad if you don't absorb. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You're on even footing as every other like non-absorb healer on that fight.
Yeah. I do kind of wonder, you brought up Iron Maidens as this like weird linchpin right now, and I think a lot of the guilds that have killed it right now have sort of said that nothing happens for 80%. So I almost wonder if the nerfs on beta were too much. I think the boat timing is good, but them losing all the extra abilities, I wonder if it should have stayed, because it seems like it's kind of a steamroll, which it's arguably the last fight before Blackhand, either that or Blast Furnace. So
you still have to perform the mechanics properly, even if you know the strat. It's kind of like Thogar.
I just wish it had like more damage, so you would want to bring healers instead of just being, bring your H pals and disc priests.
Yeah.
But even so, going back to like which fights Mistweavers are good on, like even for fights that I agree that they're all, you can find some use for a Mistweaver on every fight, but even for fights that don't really work towards the Mistweaver's strengths, you can use that time to Fistweave a lot. Like on Flamebender, there's hardly any damage outside of quick burst damage that monks aren't really capable of dealing with efficiently. But that whole fight, like I just Fistweave that whole fight until the Firestorm comes out, and I feel like it's really effective. You still do a ton of damage to the boss, kill the boss very quickly, and then during the Firestorm you're able to dump all your mana into healing, and it's very very strong.
Yeah.
Same with Iron Maidens, you just punch the whole time, which other healers aren't as good at.
Right. No, that's what it feels like. That's what's supposed to happen, I think, for Mistweaver Monks, is that you have to know when to Red Crane and when not to. And that's like this really caked in skill cap. And doing that properly on a fight does the right amount of healing, which you need to do. So, which is weird, Affinity, with your perspective right now, and you were obviously a monk for all of Mists, basically. You played every healer, but do you feel that from a Resto Druid perspective, where you kind of do the same thing an entire fight, more or less, and like just time when your trank is, is that something that goes into any type of healing comp that you work on? Is it you can take a Fistweaver for this part, and it's really good on this intermission, but then really good on this throughput phase? Like,
yeah, I mean, my general feeling throughout progression, like if I was in the position of I was picking a healer comp for a lot of fights, you would typically want to pick a Mistweaver Monk over a Druid. Just because of, cases where there's Iron Maidens is literally the greatest example, where I'm sitting there the entire time we're pulling the fight. I'm like, God, I wish I knew how to play Boomkin because I'm just doing nothing the whole time. And then you get to the end of the phase and you're like, okay, I tranked once. Like, can we kill the boss now? Like, that's my contribution to the raid. It's that and Entangling Roots. Like, if we didn't do an Entangling Roots strat, we probably could have 3-healed that fight. And, in that case, then Monk definitely pulls out ahead because the Fistweaving has its spots where it can be extremely good.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's fine. Like, having a niche role like that is totally fine as long as it's not an absorb mechanic where you just, cut in line to an absurd degree.
And this is why Discipline Priests and Holy Priests will be the last healer episode we go through. So all the healers can get out all of their shots before we eventually
I can't wait for that. You're going to have like a 5-minute blip on Holy, and then everyone's just going to be like, roll disc.
Yeah, pretty much.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But that's the argument between not taking damage is better than healing damage, and that's just throughput,
right.
and effective HP is a big deal. Whereas that was the problem that I think Mistweaver Monks sort of suffered toward the end of Siege, if I'm not mistaken, is that you could do so much blanket healing and so much just extra incoming throughput, but you could absorb all the damage that's being dealt, so you just can't heal anything.
There was a huge delta in Siege because I was really strong during initial progression, and then farm happens, and you just kind of see the meters go priest. Like every week you do less and less. So yeah, there was definitely a delta there, and you'll see that delta again for sure, and they'll have to make tweaks. I mean, they already are going in a 6-1, but I would expect to see more.
Yeah. Yep. And is that anything else you guys want to talk about with certain for chat room, what kind of fights as a Mistweaver Monk do you know when you can red crane and know when you shouldn't be red craning? Suplift, what for your mythic kill so far, what have you find out? What's the best ebb and flow for some of the bosses?
I feel like in 6.0 it's can you GX this fight for the entire fight? Okay, can you do that? Do that. And then there's no other really decision. You just sit and GX and Fistweave the entire fight, a la Beast Lord, a la Gruul, you can do that. A la a bunch of fights this tier. But if it's Pool of Mist, you generally, because of how Mana Tea works, you should be aiming to Fistweave as much as possible to get as much mana as possible, or contribute a lot of damage, because on fights like Flamebender, you can stance pretty heavily and pump a lot of damage out into the counter. Touch of Death is a pretty good utility that fight, and Mistweaver damage in general is very good on that fight, so I feel like it's one of those things you should be doing it as much as possible because it is our utility. So
Right. And Monkioh, anything else on that too before we move on?
Yeah, to when to go into crane and when not to is definitely at the start of every fight, as long as you can, until healing starts to ramp up to get your Mana Tea stacks going. And then any time you can, where there's low amounts of healing during a fight, where there's no damage going out, that's an excellent time to go into crane to do some damage and get some more Mana Tea stacks. To keep in mind that monks don't do a lot of raid mechanics, boss mechanics. You're a melee essentially for all boss mechanics. So any mechanics that melee you ignore as a monk. So it's almost always beneficial for you to stay in the melee, heal the melee, then do damage when you can, so that you're not, you don't have to sit out at range with the other healers. You have that advantage,
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it.
And the only healer that gets that sort of checkbox in the back end of the game, yeah.
It's very powerful because it allows you to focus more on healing and damage than other healers get to. They have to move a lot more than you do.
I'm surprised a lot of people don't really realize that it's an invisible utility. A lot of people don't think about that when they talk about Mistweaver utility. Ignoring all mechanics is a really big deal on fights like Tech Disc.
Yeah, you never have to dodge, impaling spears on Darmak. You never have to.
You can just sit in a corner and literally just the fight happens around you.
Yeah.
Black Fuse. Black Fuse is the greatest example of that.
Yeah.
Go to Africa, avoid everything.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Basically. So moving forward a little bit into itemization for BRF, I would say high mall gearing, probably not that great for Monk. At least I know initially during progression, you saw a lot of monks using the BOEs as opposed to upgrading because of multi-strike. But BRF is like multi-strike everywhere. So do you think that, like, were you replacing all of your gear with the 680 stuff, or were you still going for more stats? Like, how important was the itemization and coming into BRF for you?
Monkioh can go.
Yeah, I can go
Yeah,
with Monkioh. Why not?
definitely. I definitely replaced a few like 685 pieces with 680s just because replacing haste mastery pieces with crit multi-strike pieces was a huge gain, despite it being 5 item levels lower. That's a significant throughput increase just because of how poor haste and mastery are for Mistweaver Monks.
Yeah.
And generally, yeah, generally I would say you want to go with the higher eye level piece, but like I said, if those stats are terrible for you, if you have a piece that's haste mastery or versatility mastery, anything with mastery, you kind of want to get rid of and replace with a higher item level piece. But you kind of have to do the math, and Geodude's got a nice little section on the MMO forums where he discusses the different stat weights for different stats, and you kind of have to plug that in and figure it out for yourself. But um, yeah, it's definitely something you have to think about and figure out for yourself to figure out if a piece is better for you or not.
Right.
My biggest thing with that is set up your own profile in AMR, and every time you get a piece of gear, just look at that, and it's generally correct. His stat weights are very good, so.
He recently updated the spirit stat weight for that, I think like this morning or last night. So check that out if you can.
Oh, nice. Very good. So then your tier 17 set bonuses now, which is the battle gear of the somber gaze. So your attunement stat, right, is multi-strike.
Right.
So you're looking at your 2-piece, your Soothing Mist heals, have a stacking plus 5% multi-strike while channeling up to a 45% cap, and then consuming 5 stacks of Vital Mist equals 1 chi. So when you consume at least a 5 stack of that passive, you get a chi, right? And then your 4-piece, your Surging Mist multi-strikes cause your Thunder Focus Tea to generate 1 chi, and you can get 2 stacks of that. So this is like the next little bit I'm going to get into with stat specifics, but it kind of rolls into this. Does this make Monk, Mistweaver specifically, a lot more of like, if this, then that sort of rotational thing? Like, what do you get the best out of? Like, where is the power lie in your 2-piece and 4-piece Suplift? Like, how does that? Why are they good? Are they both good? Or is the 2-piece the best? Like, what's the in and out of that?
The 2-piece is definitely far and away better than the 4-piece. That's generally been a theme for Monk in the past, but the 2-piece. I'll get into Crane first. The 2-piece for Crane was a very big deal for Chi Explosion because the biggest thing Chi Explosion is limited by is how fast you can generate Chi for the output. So if you're just getting more Chi from your Surgings than you normally would, that's a pretty huge deal. Like with Power Strikes, you press the Surging, a Vital Mist Surging, you get 3 Chi, you jab and Chi Explosion again, stuff like that. That was pretty huge for Fistweaving. That's why GX, big reason why it became so prevalent right now in BRF, and that's why it was nerfed. For Serpent, it's the Serpent set bonus in 6.0 is pretty lackluster, but in 6.1, it's actually becoming fairly good for Chi Explosion in Serpent. So, how it works with the multi-strike thing is that it snapshots instant cast spells. You would get say you had 40% multi-strike from the set bonus, you cast an instant cast spell like Ram Revival. Funnily enough, it works with Revival. Detonate Chi, which is a bigger deal for Chi Explosion, and you get the 40% extra multi-strike on that. So you can actively game it pretty well. It's definitely it would be a bigger deal in 6.1. The 4-piece, it's just 2 extra Chi per 45 seconds. It's about as good as it sounds.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
because Thunder Focus Tea really only benefits heavily during Serpent Stance, right? Because you obviously can't mist during Red Craning, so.
Well, it also affects the healing of your next Surging Mist. It doubles the next healing of your Surging Mist.
I didn't put that on there, yeah. Okay.
So if you're like craning, you can hit the Thunder Focus Tea, and if all you're doing is craning in a fight, like you said, any fight where you're craning the whole fight and you don't expect to come out in Serpent anytime soon, you could you're losing out not using Thunder Focus Tea during crane to increase the healing of your Surging Mist, and it's not much, but it's something. You may as well use it.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, you get to a point when you're in Red Crane where you have to hit Surging Mist, right? Because you get the stacking
Right, and it's part of your two-piece to get more chi out of it, which the extra chi doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually smooths out the rotation so much. It's so nice.
Right.
Very, very nice.
And that's what Suplift said about that. If it really works well with Chi Explosion, because you get more of them faster. Can you get 2 Chi Explosions quick enough to actually get 16 orbs out from the 4 Chi version and then just explode all of those?
I think,
well, you can have a ton out.
Yeah, you can have a ton out. You can have like a literal sea of Mistweaver balls. If you've ever done Mythic Beast Lord Darmak with an RJW Crane Stance Mistweaver, you will see a sea of balls. It's amazing.
Yeah, just floating around everywhere. And then if you stack the multi-strike before you detonate Chi, all of those get the multi-strike addition. That can be a lot of just really snappy blanket. That's crazy good.
It could be, yeah.
It's really good for burst stealing, and we'll get into that more with the 6.1 changes.
Sure. Yeah. So then, is there a off piece that you take? Do you take all 5? Are they all itemized really well, or is there an off piece?
Chest is crit multi-strike, so you take the chest off piece.
Yep.
No chest then. Off piece chest. All right. Yeah.
The weakest piece is the gloves in the 4 set because it's crit mastery. But most of the tier outside the legs, it's haste multi-strike or crit mastery. So it's not the best, but it's not terrible though. So, and the set bonuses are definitely worth it. IMO.
Right. Yeah, the offset gloves have mastery multi-strike, which multi-strike's really good, mastery's really bad. And instead of making that choice to have 2 off-piece sets and not have the 4-piece, you may as well just get the 4-piece and just take a rather, not good glove tier.
But then to get the offset chest.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, you get offset chest, yeah.
Okay. Well, that settles that then. And then I guess stat priority with that comes down to what exactly? What do Mistweaver Monks want for their stat layouts? I know you talked about this briefly before, but Monkioh, what is your hierarchy of best to worst secondaries?
Going into 6.1, since it's all that's really relevant anymore, really by the time you get to do anything, make any more gear choices, you're going to want Spirit. Obviously, you want to try higher level item level pieces. That's really important. People underestimate that. People focus too much on secondary stats. Go with the higher item level. Anything above 5 item levels, you generally just want to take the higher item level piece. But outside of that, Spirit, then multi-strike, then crit, versatility, haste, mastery, in that order. Mastery is worth next to nothing. I mean, it's about it's 3 times less than multi-strike or something like that. It's close to that. Haste is worth a little bit more.
To give some perspective of mastery, at 100% pickup, meaning you pick up every single Mistweaver ball, it is 2/3 the value of crit.
Yeah.
Great stat.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's just because of the way the mastery works, where you have, it doesn't scale very well. First off, the amount of percent mastery you get per point of mastery rating is not very good in the first place. But then each spell that Mistweavers have a certain scalar, a certain coefficient that is applied to that percentage. So even if you had 100% mastery, where it says on the tooltip that your spells have a 100% chance to summon a healing orb when they heal somebody, it's not true, because some spells have a 15% scalar on that, which means even if you have 100% mastery, that spell still only has a 15% chance to spawn an orb. And that's one of the reasons it makes mastery not only bad, but hard to understand, how it works.
There's no way in game of actually finding that out. You have to ask the developers to find that out. So, randomly one day they could hotfix that, and we would have no idea. So
what?
Yeah, it's nonsensical. It's for balance purposes, but it's just the mastery itself is nice. The spawning healing orbs when you heal things, that's a fine mastery. It's just mastery rating is not good.
I mean, this goes back to in beta, and I talked about this with Affinity way back in the beta testing stage of the show, where removing some of the passives in your spellbook, the ones that didn't have player interaction or whatever the hell terminology they use to remove things, they remove a lot of these things in your spellbook, so you don't see where you're getting all these different stat values if you care about this, which I still harped on for so long during the beta. But you should have a advanced spellbook toggle in your UI, in your interface. You can toggle on all the crap. And in a certain way, I think you should have an ability to see all those intricate things on the spellbook tooltip if you toggle it on. If you're someone that doesn't care, it's always off by default. but I think it should be on for those that matter because yeah, it comes up on Twitter. Like you have to ask devs certain things about the back end of spells.
I agree. It would be awesome to see like spell power coefficients. If spells that cost a certain percentage of mana, it'd be good to see that. Things that aren't obvious. Things that aren't intuitive. That would be nice to have a setting for that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think, I don't know, the setting would be good, but at the same time, it's like when they finally posted all the coefficients for mastery, I opened the thing, I skimmed through it, I like kept scrolling, and I'm just like, there's not enough time in the day for me to care about this. Like,
yeah. I would
they
say
should,
just for
like,
testing purposes.
right, but I feel like maybe in the case of mastery, they should find a way to simplify it. Like, even if they're like, I've given up hope on them actually like redoing mastery altogether because they haven't done it yet. But I feel like maybe it just shouldn't be that complicated. Maybe they should find a way to make a little bit more sense without having to go to an external website to find this information out, which has been Blizzard's big focus for the last couple of years is they don't want you to go to an external website to have to figure out what is what.
Right. And removing stuff from your spellbook and hiding these coefficients and all these back end things. And then you have to ask them to tell you, like, that's going to an external website.
Right.
And chat brings up that apparently Diablo has like an advanced toggle where you can see all your different coefficients built in, all your different abilities and spells, and all where your damage comes from.
I didn't know that.
Why isn't that in WoW?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's a few things in Diablo that like having like transmog would be nice, but that's a separate topic.
It's fine. We have Twitter though. We have Twitter. It's fine.
Yeah, I know. We have Twitter. It's fine.
Twitter integration.
Because hundreds of people tweeting at Warcraft devs means they're going to answer all of us, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I don't.
There was going back to what Affinity just said. There was a Mistweaver theory crafter of the name Total Totamic. He proposed. He's the one that like basically mapped out mastery and why it's so confusing. He proposed a thing. The only mastery scaler that's good for Mistweaver right now, in fact, it's overtuned for Mistweaver, is the Renewing Mist scaler. So he said, why not just make Renewing Mastery Balls only spawn from Renewing Mist? That'd keep it balanced. And probably Eminence as well. That's to a lower extent. But if it was only came from Renewing...
You could tooltip that easily, too.
Yeah, so...
I mean, is there still an add-on? Again, externalizing. Isn't there an add-on? I remember something called Doctor Damage back in the day that you could do that like makes your tooltips like explode with information. Like, is that still in the game? Is that something you can do externally to add in to find all these things? They probably won't tell you a freaking coefficient of how your mastery interacts with a different spell, though. Gosh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. I think we should probably get off of this before my head explodes.
I know, right?
So,
well, the next topic isn't really any better.
Jeez.
Well, I don't know. I think it's a little better than Mastery. So there's some incoming 6.1 changes, which is obviously, as mentioned, Tuesday. Some of these are tooltip changes, and some of them are actual changes, specifically like the Chi Explosion, Red Crane being nerfed, or the Rising Sun Kick being buffed from 10% damage to plus 20% damage. Do you feel, specifically in relation to those, do you feel that that's really going to change your playstyle very much as far as Fistweaving is concerned, or your views on Chi Explosion? We'll go with Monkioh first for that.
So right now there are a few fights in regards to Chi Explosion. There are a few fights where you can spend the entire fight with Chi Explosion and Crane Stance, and you can do really good healing because either the boss does damage to the raid that actually works well with Chi Explosion's healing, or you don't need to Serpent at all. Whatever it may be, there are bosses that are really good with Chi Explosion, but Chi Explosion's healing in Crane Stance is getting a significant 33% nerf. So actually healing from that is going to go down. But I think Suplift said earlier that it's actually only about, what did you say, a 20% total healing increase from being in Crane.
It only affects 2 and 3. It does not affect the Eminence portion and the Mastery Ball,
Right.
the Ball portion. So
it's still like at about 20% nerf, which is significant. But you could still do it if you really wanted to. But on the flip side, Chi Explosion's getting a huge buff in Serpent, and that's a significant playstyle change for Serpent healing if you choose to go with Chi Explosion.
Yeah.
You have to actually choose where you want to place your healing because Chi Explosion is centered around your target. Unlike with Uplift, where you just spam out your Renewing Mist all crazy and just hit Uplift and hope it heals people that need it. So Chi Explosion is going to be a huge change in gameplay if you choose to use it in Serpent. With the Mana Tea change, which I guess we'll go over later, you're going to have to spend less mana, meaning you can't use Rising Sun, or not Rising Sun, but Rushing Jade Wind nearly as much as you do now, because your mana regen will be down. But Chi Torpedo is getting a buff, so you'll be able to spend more global. Yeah, yeah, a little bit of a buff. So you'll be able to spend more globals on free spells, which will just sort of offset the Mana Tea nerf.
Yeah, I mean, they're also. I brought this up so many times in the pre-show setup yesterday about that Ascension buff, though.
Oh,
yeah, that thing.
Everyone just.
I said this in the pre-show. You might as well edit your game files to have Power Strike. This Power Strikes is here. This is Chi Brew, and in the middle there's a void. It doesn't exist.
Void.
It does not exist. That talent needs to be buffed significantly.
Oh no!
They try so hard with that talent. They've tried so
it's a
hard.
trap. It sounds good, but it's just not.
Even the 10% spirit not going to make it worth the damn.
No, because you need so much spirit to even make it more impactful than the other options.
Maybe in best in slot Grommash raid gear.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's a maybe.
Dream.
That's a big maybe.
But at that point, you're probably not even going to need the regen, though, at that point.
Exactly,
So.
because you have, you're going to have 2,500 spirit or whatever it may be, and it's just, I don't need any more spirit. This is enough.
Yeah.
I guess since you brought up Mana Tea, we might as well talk about that since that does tie into the whole spirit thing.
Yep.
Blizzard has tried so hard to try and make stats more valuable. Crit, they made a chance to proc based off of your crit chance, extra Mana Tea stacks. Then they made multi-strike have a chance to, not consume your cooldown on Rising Sun Kick and Renewing Mists. And now they're like, well, you don't want spirit, so let's make Mana Tea spirit based instead of just being, your base mana. Do you agree with that change? Do you feel it's a change that really makes spirit worthwhile more than it was before? Or is it just Blizzard's attempt to sort of make you interested in spirit?
That kind of sort of though.
Kind of sort of.
I feel like it's ignorant of how good spirit was for Monk in 6.0. Spirit is a good stat for Monk in 6.0. It is a very good stat, especially in BRF. So what they're doing with this, because in Mythic Mark and High Maul specifically, this is much more applicable in High Maul IMO. I mean, Monkio's done more fights, but he can probably. Have you been able to Fistweave up to 20 stacks outside of Flamebender?
It's not too much. Yeah, Blackrock.
Yeah, right. So that's not really as applicable. In High Maul, most of the fights you could Fistweave up to 20 stacks of Mana Tea, and the fights were so short or had phases of damage that only lasted for 2 minutes. Mythic Imperator, good example, where it's only 2 to 3 minutes of non-stop healing, so why go Spirit when you can just Fistweave up to 20 stacks of Mana Tea? And yeah, but instead of removing the problem in Crane, they nerf Mana Tea for everyone. But while they do that, they make Spirit way better than Intellect for Mistweaver Monks. So what?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
And we spoke a little bit about this in the pre-show. I guess we'll take this one to Monkioh. Does this have a really big impact on scaling in general? So look at challenge modes. Monks are pretty bad in 5-mans as it is, and they've tried to correct that problem. But doesn't this sort of hurt Monks for 5-man content?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the scaling problem's all over the place with this change. Like you said, definitely in 5-mans, if you first hit level 100 or wherever you're going, it's a huge nerf to that regen because it's already bad enough that the spell costs, don't scale with your regens. That's fair. That's fine. That's really good. But your spell costs are so high as a monk because you rely on that Mana Tea to kind of refund all that mana. But if your Mana Tea is not refunding as much mana, especially as you have lower and lower spirit, you're just almost screwed on mana. You can't handle those low-level dungeons if tank damage is high or raid damage is high. And I say raid damage, party damage. And then in challenge mode, it's the same thing. You basically have no gear and your spirit's really low. You have no regen and no mana without a bunch of spirit. But even at the raid level where it seems like, okay, maybe at the low gear level it's bad, but at the high gear levels it seems pretty good because if you can get to a spirit point where you're getting more mana regen or mana refund from Mana Tea than you are on live, then it should be really good. Well, yeah, it is good for monks, but you get to a point where spirit is scaling way better for monks than it is for any other healer, and it kind of upsets that balance there. So you have spirit scaling from just normal passive regen, and then you have extra spirit scaling on Mana Tea. So not only will monks have really good passive regen because they're stacking all the spirit, they'll have even more regen than they had before if they hit a certain spirit point, which is not the way you want to go with that.
You're not even mentioning crit, by the way. Spirit
Oh,
scales
yeah,
harder with
that's
crit.
With crit
and
too.
yeah, good
the
point.
more Mana Tea you generate per minute, the value of spirit like skyrockets. Like it's insane. It's a very. I have no words for the change.
You're just
It's
shaking
pretty-
your head.
Yeah.
That's the best answer for it. It's like
I would love to
Yeah.
see an explanation of why they did this change. Not just change Mana Tea, because I do think Mana Tea needs a change, but why this specific change? Because it just does not make sense. It's too many. It adds too many variables to something that kind of worked for what it was. Like, it was
Right.
fine the way it was, but it did need a change. But this is the wrong change to make, and nobody, I think, agrees with
But I
it.
mean, we want to be going back to the beginning of the show on this point is that you should just remove Mana Tea, period.
Yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
the best. Rebalance the
Yeah.
mana cost.
Well, this
Yeah.
also really goes against Blizzard's initial healing model. It's another thing to add to the pile of things not going where they wanted it to, where they basically I remember them talking about how they want spirit to be valuable, but they also don't want you to have a huge swing from when you're gearing in 5-man heroics versus the very end of the expansion, to the point where, depending on how much spirit you gain over the expansion, it completely and dramatically changes how many casts you're able to do or how you play your class. So I would definitely say that it goes a little against what they said they wanted spirit to function as. So hopefully they'll revert it. I don't know. They tried doing it with Innervate too, didn't they? So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
Not a
nonsensical
fan.
change.
It's weird too because they want this to care about your mana throughout the whole expansion deal, which is a great mindset to have. But in every expansion, they've said that. In every expansion, monks just don't give a shit about their mana. Because you just get so much of it back. You just have this... You just never have to worry about it. And in the realm of where you've got Ever-Burning Candle and Mana Tea...
Yeah.
I
You
feel
can
like
still-
Oh, good.
Yeah, good.
I feel like I can go on it when we talk more about 6.1 changes, but another thing that's weird about it is that Mistweaver Mana, if you do not go into Crane at all, it's better than Druid and probably better than like Holy Priest, but it's not better than Holy Paladin. It's not better than Disc Priest Mana. I mean, you can just look at like mana over the fight, Holy Paladin and Disc Priest doing more output and they just use no mana. Shout out to 3k mana cost Holy Light. So
Yeah.
I think if they just removed, even if not even doing any changes to Mana Tea, if they just removed the ability to generate Mana Tea in Crane and lowered, either remove the mana costs in Crane or make it basically less mana positive than it is right now, Monk Mana would be right about where it is right now, because be almost where it needs to be, I would say.
Okay. I want to bring up, you brought up Chi Torpedo already, getting a damage buff and a healing buff, so probably would be pretty strong on certain fights. Would you combine that with Celerity for like triple
Yes.
Chi Torpedo?
It's mandatory to take Celerity.
Yep.
Okay.
Get ready to vroom.
Yeah, vroom, vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.
The other big change you guys have coming on Tuesday is a huge buff to Breath of the Serpent.
Yeah.
That's what this
That's
game needs.
significant.
More raid CDs.
Yay! So
Yes.
before I move on, Breath of the Serpent with this buff, possible usage? I mean, you guys might be, after Blackhand is done, you'll be on farm modes. You can use whatever you want. But you think for progressing guilds and Suplift in our case, is it a good extra bonus to this 90-second raid CD?
I think having the ability to spec into a 90-second cooldown raid CD will have its uses on progression in the next raid tier. I can almost guarantee it. It's very powerful in the right situation. I mean, our 90-second cooldown raid CD, it's good on Brecken Spore, it's good on Flamebender Kargaz, stuff like that. Like predictable, like spaced out damage periods, it's really strong on. Or some other guilds might find a situation where it's good, but it's not going to be the talent you take on every fight, and that's fine. Every talent should have its niche,
Right.
and that's good.
And
I don't think.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think it needs to be a raid CD, but well, how
I
it
mean,
goes.
it basically is. It's a positional requirement, like move your, Jade Serpent or move yourself to make sure that it works in that window so that it has breathe on the whole raid, or at least a large chunk of them. And then chat's getting ahead of me now with Chi Burst getting a pretty substantial healing increase going into the patch. And like, you can kind of couple those together, right? Like you could almost like Breath of the Serpent and cast it because it keeps going for 10 seconds, and then Chi Burst into the raid as well, right? With that, because Chi Burst right now sort of has meh uses. Is that going to be a little stronger after 6-1 as well?
You use it on cooldown because it's free healing, but
Right.
it's going to be really good for burst. Mistweavers do not lack in burst at all, so buffing our burst is an interesting way of going about it. But maybe they don't want Mistweavers to be the burst healers. I mean, that's an interesting niche.
An interesting
That's
way.
fine, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think too, Monkioh, on Serpent
Yeah,
stuff?
I mean they're already really strong at sustained healing, and buffing their burst is just a a buff in general to the class. But the Breath of the Serpent buff is significant. It buffs it up to the point where it's per person and per cast, I guess, half the healing of a revival. So if you cast it twice, then it heals as much as it heals a revival heal for per
Wow.
person. Sounds good. The math is really good on it. Like the numbers are really good. The problem is that revival hits everyone within 100 yards, so everyone all the time.
Right.
Whereas Breath of the Serpent is a very very small cone. Centered around on you. So if you move or if you're not in the group for whatever reason, it's only going to hit a few people. In those instances, it's not going to be very good. And like Suplift said, there's very specific situations where it's good, and maybe next year there'll be a lot of those, but right now there's a very few of them. But where it's good, it's really good.
Yeah.
So, and that's a good place for a talent. I think that's an excellent. I think it'd be a good option. It's a good thing to think about.
Must be nice to have talent choices. God.
All three of our level 100 talents are becoming equally viable in this point, which is good. A very good change for the class.
Yeah.
I hate you. I hate your class right now.
And T90 to an extent as well, because you can chip between Chi Torpedo and RJW. I think Chi Torpedo will be significantly better, which is also confusing. They're trying to nerf our mana, but they're buffing our free spells that take up a lot more globals than our.
So now you have
it's going to be like Garlon all over again, just free spells everywhere.
Yeah. More of our output going into free spells is obviously not good for balance, so with healer mana, so.
Yeah. The last little bit of here I wanted to bring up, which is sort of an interesting point. We talked about Fistweaving so much during the show so far, and it's obviously a really big point of the Mistweaver kit, which I'm sure all the Windwalkers out there are like, every patch, Blizzard, this one's a positive one. Rising Sun Kick is going from 10% of the debuff damage from abilities to 20%. So they're getting a 10% damage buff on abilities, which works out to not 10% flat, but that affects Red Crane Monk. So where is how much of a benefit is this going to be for?
I think it's not significant, but it's a good buff to Pool of Mist, and in my Pool of Mist Crane, and in my mind, making Pool of Mist Crane better is a good thing because it's a more fun rotation and mindlessly pressing jab 4 times in a row. That's just my opinion. What's your opinion, Monkioh?
It's a huge. I mean, it's a significant buff to the DPS you do in with Pool of Mist talent and Crane. It's gonna be, if you spent your entire time DPSing, you could do 30k DPS without too much trouble with this buff. If you spent a majority of the time Fistweaving. Super strong buff. Obviously, there's a Windwalker buff, and it has side effects on Mistweavers, and they're reverting a nerf that they already did. But it's really nice because not only does it increase your damage, it increases your healing by that same amount during Crane. So I like it. I think it's great. I can spend more time Fistweaving with Palm because it's going to do more healing. More buffs, please. We're not good enough yet.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if it was talked about, but I guess you guys noted that the Chi Sphere detonation is getting a big buff, but the I guess periodic healing, which I pulled that from all the notes. Like, what is there a periodic healing element to Chi Sphere? Like when they actually when they pop themselves?
Oh, Zen
it
Sphere,
lasts for 16 seconds or until you dip to 35, and it does a massive detonate.
Okay.
It's how they redesign it is better for Mistweavers because of our 2-piece, obviously.
Right.
But it's not. It's in my opinion, it's not worth the extra because Chi Burst is being buffed as well. So why waste your time potentially lowering your output or giving more mental bandwidth to something that at most would probably be like 1% better or like 2% better. It's just, and Chi Burst is more versatile in the fact that it's extremely good for burst. So, I mean, Zen Spear is as well, but it's a lot easier to use Chi Burst.
Yeah.
So,
if they hadn't buffed Chi Burst, then it would have. You might have actually had to make a choice between Zen Sphere and Chi Burst because the healing they did over a certain period of time was actually fairly similar. And with the Zen Sphere change is that they put more of the healing into the detonate and less healing into the hot,
Right.
which works for high raid damage because more often than not it gets exploded early. But with the buff to Chi Burst, it's like, why would you even consider the other talents? This is too good now. It's way too good.
Yeah.
There's no reason to even consider anything else. But whatever.
Interesting.
As Chat said, Zen Sphere is kind of in the same field as Ascension.
Ascension
So
doesn't exist.
It's what I was thinking. Like they try so hard to make it work, and every time they buff it, I look at it and I go, it's still an extra global for it to be worthwhile. So yeah,
it's a cool idea, but math way just didn't work out with the math.
Mm-hmm. So anything else on 6.1 stuff or Mistweaver things in that regard before I take us on a little bit of a break?
I would say if you, with the buffs, Chi Torpedo being buffed, if you take Chi Torpedo, some people are concerned that it makes you move too much and you be out of place. And I know a lot of people still don't know that you can like jump cast Chi Torpedo, where you jump and cast Chi Torpedo immediately and do the same thing with roll, and you hardly go anywhere. So you jump, hit the Chi Torpedo button immediately, and you don't go anywhere. So you don't have any movement problems with Chi Torpedo if you decide to take it. Those concerns should be leveled.
That's a real thing?
Yeah.
Working as intended?
You spend most of your travel time in the air.
It's always done that, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
So just, in case you didn't know, you do that.
But that's not nearly as cool as going like down the room and coming down. You've got to have that.
It's all the POVs of Affinity's kills in Miss Pandaria was always just like foosh.
I think I made a tweet where like this is the new guide for Mistweaver in 6.1. I linked Affinity's 5.0 video when Mistweaver's good.
Yeah, it's just renewing mist. It's like a race car. Yeah,
I think loved it. Just as a comment on 6.1, regardless of the Mana Tea change, I think the classes overall got buffed. I think it improved as well, which is great.
I agree.
The Mana Tea change sucks, but it's offset by Chi Burst and Chi Torpedo.
And the great passive spirit trinket you can get off of Blast Furnace. Like, if you can get that, you're in good shape. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Good stuff. All right. Moving on a little bit. We're going to get some more nitty-gritty stuff here after a little bit of a break. I'm going to take a couple of minutes here to tell you guys about some websites and communities and some things and a little bit of an announcement that you may not have heard about yet already if you don't follow us on social media. So first off, if you don't have this bookmarked already, or these next 3 websites bookmarked already, I don't know what you're doing right now with your wildlife. MMO-Champion, MMO-Champion.com is the place to go for all of those news. Ready? This is just the front page right now because of all the 6.1 stuff. Obviously, there's Method's kill. Yeah. Speaking of Method, I am working with Roger and Sko to plan for an interview with them on March 1st. So Blackhand World First on the 1st. So next week's episode will be with 3 members of Method, talk to them about the World First there, just like I did with Paragon when they did Highmall. And oh my god, here we go. Here's the scrolling. So MMO-Champion gets everything. Everything. This Doom mod is hilarious. This is a 6.1 survival guide. There's all the patch note changes. The interview with the Costas just had with Mammy Twink. Pretty good stuff. All the write-up right there. It keeps going. We're still going, friends. There's Midwinter's Iron Maiden's World First video. It keeps going. There's some awesome stuff if you want to design a new PC. They do this every couple of weeks. Go to MMO-Champion, bookmark that, get on that. Great website. Another one you need to know about, these kind of go hand in hand in a way. We talked about Ask Mr. Robot earlier in the show, which for stat weighting yourself, you want to go up here and go to Gear Optimizer, make your account, get in there, set that up. They also introduced combat logs recently, which is very infographical and cool. I'm bringing up my recent kill of Iron Maiden's Heroic just because I haven't logged a lot of mythic stuff to this yet. And it does all this like pop-up infographic, like average raid DPS compared to who's putting in, your top 5, the good damage, but how is your gear compared to that? Really, really neat, clean infographic stuff, which if you're like totally blown away by the next website, this could be a good thing for you. So if you want to log your things to Ask Mr. Robot, super easy desktop app you can get from the website. Go check that out. If you want to, you gotta have logs, man. Gotta have logs. And then the option, if you are a crazy person with numbers, of course, Warcraft logs. This is like where you want to go, right? If you don't know about Warcraft logs just yet, and you're not logging and not digging into your raid comp stuff, this is where you want to go. This is the much deeper view. If you don't want to go super deep into your logs, you can use AMR. That's the whole point. And if you want to go, we must go deeper, then Warcraft logs is where you want to go. So do that. And of course, if you've missed any of our past shows, they're all on our YouTube page down below. All the kill videos from my point of view are down there. All of our past interviews. We just did Sloopbag and Trekkie for Prop Paladins. Before that, we had Boomkins with Nagura and Baloney. I mean, we had Vixen and Keen for Resto Shamans. I mean, we all in all, we had Vigilant and Fiery Demise for Rogues. So many videos. Oh my goodness. I have more stuff coming too, of course. I have the Midwinter Method live raid from BlizzCon. I have a BlizzCon 2015 highlight reel coming soon. I do that on purpose. I delay them so that you can relive awesome bits from BlizzCon when it's still months away. That's the whole point. So our YouTube page down below. Of course, this episode will be up on YouTube Monday evening-ish before 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So if you've missed part of the episode, you can watch it tomorrow on the YouTubes. Yeah. Okay, time to get into some nitty-gritty. So, now we've come to it. We're going to break down the level 100 talents, which we've talked about a little bit before so far. And let's go a little bit into each of them now. So, the level 100 talents for you guys are, of course, Breath of the Serpent, Chi Explosion, and Pool of Mists. So you've got the raid CD, the 90-second raid CD that breathes towards you from your Jade Serpent statue. Chi Explosion, otherwise known as GG Explosion, in my opinion. And then, of course, Pool of Mists, which glad it was replaced with not Trail of Mists. And we're pooping out Chi Orbs all over the place. It's fine.
Rip Path of Mists.
Rip Path of Mists.
Such a cool concept.
Yeah, for drawing butts all over the raid, sure.
Well,
yeah.
Duh.
No
other practical use for it.
So Monkioh, where do the strengths lie in these? Are there lots of choices where you can actually change with again taking in the buff coming in Tuesday?
Right. So at 6.1, really your default talent for the level 100 talents is going to be Pool of Mist. It's useful in every single fight. There's never a fight where he's like, I took Pool of Mist, now my healing's going to suck. That doesn't exist. Pool of Mist is going to be great for every fight. It's your default talent. If you can make use of Chi Explosion in certain fights where you want to heal the melee or your ranged or stacked, it's really good in Serpent now. Got nerfed in Crane, but it's much more healing in Serpent now than it is on live. In 6.1, it's better than it is on live. So if you can make use of Chi Explosion, especially if you have your 2-piece bonus, because Chi Explosion will get the increased multi-strike from your 2-piece Soothing Mist channel. It can do more healing than 2 uplifts would have with the 2-piece bonus channeling, which right now it's close without the bonus, but it's a little bit lower than 2 uplifts for Chi Explosion. But it's close enough that it really doesn't matter. So if you find a chance to use Chi Explosion, it could be better, it could be less overhealing, depends. But very, situational talent. Same thing with Breath of the Serpent. Very situational. Maybe there's some fights where you can find use for it, or like Suplift said, if your guild wants to use it as an extra cooldown, you can do that. But other than that, yeah, definitely Pool of Mist default talent. Still really good for Crane. Obviously, still amazing for Serpent. Yeah.
Yeah. It just sounds like, again, I don't want to make Affinity too salty. Is you have choices. You have
choices.
I know, right? Which is
crazy.
Which is the whole point of talent, the new talent trees, right? You have to change them. I mean, for me, I have those all the time because I'm a hybrid. I have to change mine out depending on what I want to do each fight. And I have a new choice coming in 6-1 because Storm Elemental won't be crap. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I mean, Suplift, anything else to add on your level 100 talents here? I mean, do you find yourself actually changing them out fight to fight? Because you can't just sit with one. I guess you could just take Pool of Mists for everything, but probably not super optimal.
But right in 6.0, the only choice is Chi Explosion, Crane, and then Pool of Mist, Serpent.
Okay.
The thing Monkioh didn't mention, regardless of the nerf to Chi Explosion, it is still the superior talent for healing in Serpent and healing in Crane for extended periods. It is still the superior talent. That's a benefit of speccing into that talent. That's also a big problem with Breath of the Serpent. It offers no Fistweaving benefit, which is confusing.
Right.
It should probably, I don't know, it needs, if they wanted to make the three truly equal, They could lower the healing and add a Fistweaving benefit or something like that. I don't know. For Breath of the Serpent specifically.
Your statue now punches the boss as well.
Well, I was wondering, like, if you take Breath of the Serpent, like maybe it's a passive for Red Crane, like it increases your Eminence healing or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe. Because that is a good point, that if you are in... I mean, if you're taking Breath of the Serpent, you're obviously taking it for, like, super duper stack up and you need a raid cooldown phase, right? Because you can couple Breath with RJW into blanketing your raid and then uplift spamming, I would assume would be pretty...
The thing is with Breath, Monkioh didn't even mention, is that you can RJW Breath and then channel Soothing Mist, and the Breath will get this... Yeah, it will get the multi-strike from the 2-piece.
Point.
Yeah. That's set bonus, though.
That set bonus actually creates a lot of things for Chi Explosion. A big thing...
Affinity's so salty right now!
I feel like Monk talents are like the best out of every class. Like every class, you look at Holy Paladin, just Beacon of Faith, GG.
Yeah, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But
that's a problem, though. That's a problem.
For a Chi Explosion, the 2-piece, it's very bursty because that can affect Detonate, and then you get 8 Chi Orbs. You can end the cast of a Detonate and do insane burst healing. That's probably will be the best talent for the... If your guild has a problem with, like... Which is good. If your guild has a problem with, like, the stat phase on Orgroger, for example,
right,
that'd be the best talent for that. And it's great that there's, like, two different talents are good in the same fight for different reasons. That's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from a healer just yet. I mean...
Yeah, definitely a lot of good decisions to be made in Monk talents.
Yeah. I mean, there have only 2 healers left before I get to Priest talk, so now it's depending on Druid or Paladin next. But, like, I get to the section in the Paladin show soon, it's going to be like, you take double bacon, you heal the tanks. And we're done here. And we're done here. Show, basically. Which... this is so weird that you guys have so many, and it's cool too that like different talent choices interact with other talents, like we talked about before, with the buff coming to Chi Torpedo or to Vroom Vroom. You can take Celerity, which literally buffs Chi Torpedo again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Significantly. Not only does it give it extra charge, but it reduces the cooldown by what, 5 seconds? I think.
Yeah, it's 15 second
that's
cooldown.
Pretty significant.
So, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous how you have a lot of different options.
Oh, one more thing. I just remembered for Chi Explosion. This is really important. You have really high uptime of Glyph of Soothing Mist. And if you don't know what Glyph of Soothing Mist is, I don't know if you have the page open, but for every 1 second you channel Soothing Mist, you gain a 60% movement speed buff. So if you channel the entire duration of Soothing Mist, you get a 10-second duration, 60% movement speed buff. So,
and that's good with what again? That's good with what's couples?
Well, it's just an extra. It supplements mobility. The problem with Chi Explosion is that if you break your Soothing channel, it's really punished by that. But to counteract that, you have really high uptime of that glyph.
Okay.
So,
just an extra little bonus.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. All right. You want to take us into maybe some actually, I didn't ask this before. I'll go backtrack real quick. This is a weapon enchant preference for Mistweaver Monks.
A good topic.
It's
I don't know. I mean, some people take the multi-strike enchant. Some people are actually moving towards the crit enchant if they have too much multi-strike. I don't know if that was used Suplift, but I'll always prefer the spirit enchant because I feel like it's never wasted. Except at the very, very start of the fight, it might be a little bit wasted, but you know, the multi-strike enchant obviously very good when you're actually healing up damage, like actively healing up damage when it procs. But outside of that, you know, it could be a short window, could be a big window. It's kind of worthless. Like if it procs when you're not doing anything, you're just kind of, you know, sitting around healing a little bit of damage, you're doing a little tank healing. It's not as worthwhile as a spirit proc will be to get your mana back up. But the differences between them are very small.
The reason why
it's nice to have choices.
The reason
do you need some saltines to soak up some of this real quick, Skylar? Do you need a little bit of time? You know, you gotta.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. But that's a good point. Like this whole show and these show notes I was building together, I was like, there's so many things they can do.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then like, I don't think any other healer has this right now.
Definitely leads to this being very fun.
Yeah.
The reason I was thinking of going crit enchant, by the way, is because I have a problem where I have too much multi-strike.
Yeah, right.
Because of how good it scales when you have an attunement and how naturally well it scales with a proc that gives you 2,550 multi-strike. I hit a problem where my average multi-strike is very high, so the crit enchant's pretty good. Because in my guild, I try and sit in Crane as much as possible, so I just naturally just went to the Crane enchant.
Okay.
If you were really, really min-maxing, you would try to get 2 weapons and switch between both of them for fights. But I think you should probably do the Spirit one. I haven't done the Spirit one because YOLO, basically. Do as I say, don't do what I do. Do what I say, don't do what I do.
Yeah,
I think that's how it goes.
I ran the spirit or the multi-strike enchant for a while, and I didn't notice a significant difference in regen. But after having the spirit enchant,
it's better to have consistency as a healer.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Interesting. Does that to bring out? We've asked every healer this so far before, and we will, of course, in the future. If it is beneficial on certain fights or certain talent choices to take different weapon enchants if you're gaming around watching your weapon enchant, because obviously as a healer you only get one. So that makes me also wonder real quick too, like I thought your attunement stats are supposed to be like a guideline but not your freaking best stat, man.
Well, I think the intent was that I thought the intent was just the opposite of that, where it was supposed to be your best stat, but it didn't work out for some classes. It just, it's like, yeah, that's a decent stat, but it's not our best stat just because, I don't know, they designed it poorly or whatever.
Right.
They wanted it to be a really good stat, but it's just not. But for the most part, it's a really good stat for classes, and it's really good for monks. I mean.
Right. So your options then for weapon enchants would be multi-strike, crit, or spirit if you're just going for the consistency.
Crit will be probably the best enchant when we get a lot of multi-strike and spirit scales really high. So then the crit enchant will be very good. Crit's value will eventually probably be better than multi-strike.
Okay.
Just because of Mana Tea. Yeah. So
all them variables coming together with this stupid Mana Tea change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about 45 talents and how that works with the Mana Tea. But
well, if you want to, go for it. More choices, as Skylar sits here and looks at... What's your 45 tier for druids, Skylar? You have...
It's irrelevant is what it is.
Right.
Let me log in and look, because I don't even know, because that's how much it doesn't matter.
Yeah, damn it. I'm so sad. So sad.
If you ask me, Power Strikes is the only talent that exists. If you ask anyone else, it's Chi Brew. But Chi Brew is for nerds. True facts.
Really? So you're comparing... that Mistweavers with 2 charges of Chi Brew, you get 2 Chi and 1 stack of Mana Tea with 2 charges maximum. Or the Power Strikes is that every 15 seconds, your next jab, Spinning Crane Kick, Expel Harm, or Surging Mist, you get 1 Chi or Chi Sphere if you are at maximum. So, I mean, this is a debate between certain people that like passes versus on demand. I mean, Monkioh, do you feel differently than Suplift?
I think me and Monkioh do Power Strikes, and a lot of other Mistweavers do Chi Brew, if I recall correctly.
I was running Power Strikes throughout all Heimwall, but once I think at the beginning of BRF progression, I was using Power Strikes, but now I'm starting to move towards Chi Brew. The fights are beginning to be more bursty than sustained damage, like they were in Heimwall. I knew there's a lot of damage almost all the time in the harder Heimwall fights, but in BRF, I feel like I have more control, and that's kind of how I've always viewed them. Like you said, it was. Power Strikes is more sustained Chi generation. You're going to get a bunch of Chi over time, but Chi Brew is like, I know I need Chi here. I don't need it 15 seconds earlier. I need it now or later. I know I can save Chi Brew for that, and I feel like I'm getting more and more, Mana Tea stacks. Obviously, you do through Chi Brew than I ever did for Power Strikes. And going into 6.1, Chi Brew is going to be the stronger option of the two, simply because your Mana Tea stacks are going to be much more precious to you than they ever have been before.
Right.
I thought it was worse because Mana Tea got nerfed, and I mean they both are nerfed technically, but Power Strikes was nerfed less. I mean, it's not exact. Just to go into that, it's not actually exactly 4 and 2 Chi per minute, because how they work. There's also the potential Chi from the Mana Tea, right? And it's like an infinite feedback loop, technically. So at certain crit percentages, it's actually like they're technically equal in terms of how much Chi per minute they generate. But basically the 6-1 changes, I think Chi Brew is probably going to be the best talent regardless anyway, because of how hard it scales in comparison to Power Strikes, because it double dips off crit, because you get 2 Chi, which counts towards the Mana Tea, and you get a free stack of Mana Tea, which can double crit, right? So it scales really hard with crit, and it scales really hard with spirit. So
yeah, Power Strikes doesn't scale at all. It's cheaper. The better your gear gets, the better it gets, and it's just. But the difference between them, if you're not as geared, is very, very small. Like people don't. It's not something to stress over. Just play with the one that you prefer to play with, whatever one you like better. It works with the fight that you're doing.
Okay, interesting. Is there any? And now, because we're not going to break down like individual bosses right now, because you have so many choices you can really go through. Is there anything about your level 30 talents between Wave, Zen Sphere, and Chi Burst now that are going to be really impacted?
That's the only true with no choice at all. It's always Chi Burst in every situation.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Wave does no damage and healing. Like literally, I think you lose healing by casting the spell.
Wow.
And Zen Sphere is too. I would say it's too mechanically intensive. I don't know if that's the word to make it worthwhile in realistic situations.
Yeah, the idea is right. Yeah.
I mean, it's like a friendly living bomb that heals the target you put it on. So I mean, like,
yeah,
you really have to really micromanage it, I guess, to a degree to make it really worth a damn.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Chi Wave's only really like you would choose it if you spend the entire fight in Crane and you took Pool of Mist. Like it's very like you said, if then else kind of situation where if you're gonna spend the entire fight in Crane and you want to do the most damage possible, you take Chi Wave. Otherwise, you just always take Chi Burst.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Are there any glyphs that are of heavy importance outside of Soothing Mist that you want to talk about?
Yes.
Soothing Mist, yeah. You can go Monkioh.
No, absolutely. You definitely cannot be without the Renewing Mist glyph, which increases the baseline Renewing Mist jumps from targets within 20 yards, but with the glyph increases that an extra 20 yards to 40. So you need that glyph whenever you're healing in Serpent.
That feels so awkwardly mandatory, but okay.
It is. But there's very few other mandatory glyphs. Like the Soothing Mist glyph, as he was about to say, is very good.
It's situational for Pool of Mist because you generally don't Soothing Mist that much, but the rest are pretty situational. You could run Touch of Death. You could run, if you only get one Touch of Death, it's probably better to run that. Glyph of Surging is good for Heavy Crane because it removes potential mental bandwidth, and might as well take it.
Because it makes it a smart heal, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's situational glyphs, like the glyph of Detoxing, which gives your Dispel 2 charges instead of 1, but increases the cooldown. Like a glyph like that would be useful on Darmak, for example, if your healers are struggling with dispelling the Conflag on Mythic. Definitely a good glyph to take for that.
Because you could dispel and dispel instead of having only
if you just don't trust your other healers to dispel, or you think they might be on global, it's good to dispel that instantly.
I think it's actually interesting to bring up the Touch of Death glyph, because I think that's probably people might not be really aware of, is that if you do run a Mistweaver, you do have this really good Touch of Death. And Touch of Death has lots of small iterations that are really powerful. Like I think.
It's definitely impactful.
It's very good. It's a very powerful ability.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be one of the phrases we utter the most in our raids. Touch of Death, Touch of Death, Touch of Death.
Right.
Definitely on Blast Furnace for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things you can Touch of Death on fights with ads that are meaningful, but even like more smaller things, like if guilds right now are early into Mythic and you're pressing on like say Orgorger, for example, you can totally Touch of Death those boxes from such a higher amount of health and move your ranged or your DPS on to get other boxes dead. Or you can only do that once every phase, but still that's like a free box kill. Like small little things.
You can Touch of Death every big ad on Darmak. That's very significant.
Oh wow!
It's a lot of free damage you're getting to the raid.
You gotta make sure not to take the glyph for that. If you plan on using Touch of Death throughout a fight multiple times, do not take the glyph. If it's a single target fight, like if it's Gruul, you'd better off taking the glyph, because you're only going to use it once and you don't want it to consume your chi. Yeah.
Right. Good. Nice. Very cool. Interesting. Do you want to bring up any fights in particular that you're curious about? Like, how does your healer core lay out things? Do you really go through every person when you do stuff, Affy? Like, do you make sure you have certain things, or is in this sort of a high-end raiding guild environment, do you sort of trust all your healers to have a certain thing, or do you in Monkioh like have you worked around talent builds based on an encounter, or?
I mean, people do, we make tweaks and stuff as we go along, but that's always, a personal thing. Like, I'll look at a fight and I'll, Blast Furnace is a great example where I started out with DOC or whatever, and I was like, man, this might not be so good. So, I mean, it's kind of the same for everybody else. They're just kind of on their own for that.
Yeah. Well, I
guess... Do what you will.
Do what you... I mean,
don't suck, stuff like that.
don't suck, don't die, kill the boss, bring HP to 0. Right.
Right.
So I guess, are there any other in particular moments or with your talent layouts that are really you want to bring up to your fellow Mistweavers out there? Suplift? Anything else?
If you can GX, this is not really relevant anymore, so I won't say that. But
oh no.
Maybe there's the only thing I can think of is Breath of the Serpent on Flamebender. You should try and incorporate that into your strategy as much as possible.
Okay.
Because it's a very powerful tool for firestorms. You can use more CDs on face taking the dogs. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about it.
Good stuff. Monkioh?
I could only think of Heart of the Wild. Maybe. I don't know. It's probably. I don't know. Can't think of
not really.
else.
I think for most fights, I'm gonna go with in 6.1, I'm gonna go with Palm, Pool of Mist, Chi Torpedo, Celerity, Chi Burst. It's gonna be my default for pretty much every fight, and I don't see myself deviating from that too much. Maybe take a Chi Explosion here. I might try Breath of the Serpent on Chromog once or twice, see how that works, but that's about it for me.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now we have 2 little questions to wrap up before I let you guys soapbox for a minute or so. So Kev, in your guild, in Midwinter, asks, he wants to know.
God.
He wants
this is
to
not
know
going to be loaded.
how many monks sitting in Red Crane 99% of the time on a single target fight would you need to do 200,000 raid HPS?
6.04, 6.15. That's maybe probably 6. I don't know.
Yeah? 6?
I would say it depends if you take which talent. I'd say with Chi Explosion, you could do probably 5 or 6 would be fine.
Yeah.
I would say with Pool of Mists, you do more damage, but you would take more monks to do that 200k HPS number that he came up with.
Right. Okay.
It may take 6, 8, almost 10, depending on how good they are.
Fair enough.
The other question is why did Midwinter recruit him as a Resto Champ if he's played Holy Palm in every fight? Boom.
Oh! Wow! What?
No comment.
Wow! Okay.
The shots.
Affy, take Calligraphy's question and you can answer it as well. This is a good one.
This is a great question.
It's a really important question. This is the most important question in the show. Yeah, of course.
Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Waffles.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, are you getting outed?
I'm done. I'm done with this guild.
I'm waffles.
Done with the
I'm
spec
waffles
class.
again too. You really pancake man, Monkioh? Pancake man?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm waffles, man.
Yes.
Waffles.
You're voted off the island.
Done. See you later.
Oh my
Go
goodness.
re-roll to Druid, dude.
I don't think there's ever been a better
I
time
said
to
an
hit the
insult.
button. That's gonna be it, man. We're just destroyed chat room. The button is going. Thank you all so much for being here. Episode number 71 of Final Boss TV. Of course, if you missed part of the episode, it'll be up online on YouTube tomorrow. Around the table at our guests. Again, we had Suplift. There he is. You can go follow him on Twitter at Suplift. Thank you for being on the show, sir. It was a great time.
Thank you very much.
A lot of
This
fun.
is an enjoyable experience.
Dropped some knowledge bombs, fired some shots. Yep. Thank you, sir. Also had Monkioh from Midwinter. You can follow him on Twitter also at Monkioh. It's really hard to find these guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Try to stay hidden.
It was a pleasure. I was trying to stay hidden.
Definitely a lot of fun for me too. It was awesome. Thank you.
Very good, very good. And there's the healing guest co-host guy. You may know who this is. Affinity. His
Hello.
Twitter changed. There's no 2 I's anymore. It's a Y and it's US at the end. You can follow him there.
You can also follow me on #NerfDisc. I believe that's an option.
There's a Reddit community about it, and there's a Twitter hashtag community about it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you know.
It's very
Can we
good.
start at #Nerf Holy Paladins, please?
Well,
We did start that one too, but I mean, we did #NerfDisc, and then they announced that they were kind of bad at BlizzCon, and then they weren't. I was so happy, and then so sad.
Indeed. I don't know, man. Goodness. And of course, if you were asking questions in chat right now, you want to go follow Geodo on Twitter at GeodoMW for Mistweaver. He is your resident tech brain for Mistweaver Monks. If you have questions, please bother him about stuff. I see him tweeting numbers and stuff all the time, and integers and parentheses and caret symbols. I'm like, what the hell is all this crap on my Twitter feed? So if you have questions, go follow these guys on Twitter. Talk to them about stuff. Again, next week's episode March 1st will be Methods World First. 2 Midwinter guests and a Midwinter co-host. But we're interviewing Method next week. More info on the guests coming on that show on social media throughout the week. There'll be 3 guests from Method to talk about Black Hand and stuff like that. So we will see you then. Have fun at work this week. Trust in the seal of tempered fate. And for everyone behind the scenes of Final Boss TV, thank you all so much for watching. And bye-bye. Bye-bye. Make faces or wave. There it is. That was really easy. You guys are so good at this. I'm like
very zen.
I'm surprised. Whoa.
I'm sure they saw all 5 pixels in my hand.
Really, Monkioh? Well done, sir. I like it. All right. Good stuff.